So, my background, and who knows what this screen desktop is?
Yeah, there's nothing up.
Oh, there's nothing up. Okay, well, oh, sorry. That was a test. Hold on. I get nervous typing my password in public.
It's very secure.
Yay, okay. All right, here we go. All right. All right, so this desktop here.
PowerPoint.
That desktop there. Who knows what that is?
Rick and Morty.
Yeah.
Northern Lights.
Well, yeah, a little bit. Okay. So I like understanding my audience. It's a little bit of social engineering as well. All right, so my name is Joshua Davis, and I have a screen up. Stand by. You cannot have a presentation without AV controls. All right. My name is Joshua Davis. Real quick about my expertise. My background, I have an undergrad in computer science. I worked at Georgia Tech Research Institute for 20 years. There I got an MBA because I thought it would be a good idea, and it was. I love software, did a lot of government work, a lot of crazy government work, that I learned a lot about how bad the world is and how scary cyber is. So I've been doing cyber officially 10 years. I used to have some certs in cybersecurity. I don't pay the money anymore because it's a bit of a scam. But what I'm going to do today is take you guys through my perspective on security. I'm then going to kind of share a little bit of the industry's perspective on how you secure yourself, and then also try to give you guys some tips and tools to help you in your organization. Because one thing I realize about all you nerds in here is you probably built your own networks back in the day. You're probably moving to the cloud. You're probably becoming dependent upon SaaS and stuff, which you need to. Because security is expensive. Good security is really hard to find and find the talent. So the thing that I'm going to stress to start off with, though, is culture. At the end of the day, it's not about what tech you have. It's about your culture's awareness. And I would suggest to all of you in the room here, you're very wonderfully targeted attack for ransomware. And I don't know if you don't know what ransomware is, we'll talk about that. Because your data is very attractive to me. All right, so I'm going to demystify cybersecurity. It's not really spooky. But let's just talk about the world. So this is a chart showing how millions of people are on the internet right now. So if you look at the U.S., we're way down there. What's the number? It's U.S. is Central American. Okay, so, I mean, we're tiny. And look at Asia. So yeah, we're 320 million. And Asia is 947 million. And in Asia, what's crazy, it's only like 23 to 30% penetration of internet. In the United States, it's about 90-something. So if you want to get into the nation-state piece, as well as in the evil side of the world, there's a lot of actors out there. So part of the problem with the U.S. versus others, there's not a lot of us. So that's kind of a scary thought. Additionally, we adopt technology. Everyone here has a computer. Everyone's computer is probably connected to the internet. But all these devices here are connected to the internet as well. So top right hand corner, who has an Alexa in their house? Who has one of these little plugs you can turn on and off from anywhere in the world? I mean, it's beautiful. We're going to keep doing this. Well, but check this out. I think it says by 2025, 75 billion internet-connected devices. So as an attacker, holy cow. I mean, one, social engineering. I can do so much with data now, have access to that I don't have to see you physically. But two, all these, basically, think about your attack surface. Every access I have to the internet is one more vector in. Now, granted, it can be secure, cool, but there's a whole bunch of others. So anyway, what I'm conveying to you guys is as we progress forward, we're going to become more and more vulnerable, and we're going to become more and more dependent. So I'm going to stress again about security awareness and being conscious of your culture and your organization. All right, so a lot of you folks in here wrote software. So everything that I'm talking about is about software. Some cases hardware, but mainly software. So left-hand side are operating systems. That's the base platform that you interact with the computer with. On top of it, there's applications. In some cases, you guys run AccuZIP locally. That's an application. But also web browsers. Web browsers are the means of getting on the internet, as well as these apps that I run. But every single one of these things are written by humans. Humans make mistakes, and then create aspects for vulnerabilities. And the whole point of the cybersecurity world is about exploiting. exploiting a vulnerability that I find. All right, so in the United States, it is a felony to break into, to do anything to someone else's computing device without prior authorization. And I'm telling you that because I'm going to tell you a little bit about pen testing. But you need to understand this. That's part of the problem of the U.S. being a crime because other nation states don't have those rules. All right, so I call a lot of you guys in here hackers, the original hackers, because you guys wrote code, you're still writing scripts now, you're hacking. Hacking originally was a constructive mentality of creation. Well, it's become a very negative term now, which it means, hacking in the, I'm breaking into your computer. But cracking is really the original term. But it's short. You all know what a hacker is. What's crazy too about hacking and motivations, back in the day I didn't do anything, well, I won't say it out loud, but it was fun. You install stuff on people's computers and not supposed to be there, and you do things remotely. That was fun. And that's turned into a big business now. So you still have fun hacking. So I did meet, there's a gentleman here that's actually a locksmith. That's original hacking right there as well. So part of the culture of security and hacking, you'll see lockpicking setups. Like my son's, he's 12 now. When he was 10, we had a conference where we had a gumball machine with a lock on it, and he had to pick it to get a prize out of it. And the reason is that I want him to learn that is that's part of what's important about security is thinking out of the box. These rules of not supposed to be breaking in are just ideas that we choose to agree to, but recognize those that want your data aren't going to. So you need to think like them. So I definitely recommend lockpicking. Make sure you understand your local laws in regards to carrying lockpicking sets, because in some states it's actually illegal to possess them. All right, so this is the original, back in the 80s, everyone had this fear that you could blow a computer up. Well, it sounds far-fetched, but how many of you folks in here ever heard of the concept of Stuxnet? So Stuxnet was a virus, and viruses propagate typically with humans. There's something called I can't even remember right now, worm, which it doesn't require a human. But basically, someone wrote some software targeting Windows because that Windows Siemens box was running Windows. And what the person who wrote the virus knew is when I hit that Siemens box, I'm going to mess up the controls and stuff so that the person that's enriching uranium damages the infrastructure physically. So what's beautiful about the attack, and this happened, what's beautiful about it is they used us to spread that virus around, but it didn't hurt our computers. And then some idiot or some agent took a thumb drive into where they're doing the enrichment, put it on the network, and then boom. Very expensive development. I don't think the US and Israel officially declared they wrote it, but basically, so Iran, it brought down, in theory, multiple years setback, physical destruction through software, which is beautiful and scary. All right, so this is kind of getting to the cybersecurity stuff. So it's really not that mysterious. It's just overwhelming because there's so much data. But at the end of the day, it's all about vulnerabilities. So like I talked about, all your software creates holes as well as your culture. There's policies with your passwords. There's policies when you call the help desk that could affect could affect your security. But really exploitation. That's what I'm talking about. At the end of the day, I find a vulnerability, I exploit it for some gain. And then when I talk about attack surface, that's basically what is that? What's in front of me that someone out wants to get in? That's it. So really understanding your attack surface, and then understanding what vulnerabilities you possess, and then think about your threats. And I'll talk about in a minute how they actually exploit you. And security posture is really the concept of how do you quantify that, and what's my security posture in my organization. All right, malware and viruses. Malware is the term that everyone calls a virus. Virus is a very specific type of malware. But at the end of the day, all that software I showed you, somebody found an exploit. That some human made a mistake, or part of the architecture was designed that they could compromise it, and they write a piece of software that they somehow get to you, and then they exploit your PDF reader, your email box, so on and so forth. When I was at Tech, and this was about 4 or 5 years ago, we were getting malware every day. We had some networks that we connected to, some humans that shared it. we're seeing 300,000 unique samples of malware every day. So what I mean by unique, it didn't look alike. Every virus scanning app had to look for every single one of those. So if you do the math on 300,000 a day and add that up over time, there's a lot of malware out there. Now, what's happening is making it harder for virus scanners and stuff to find it. But also what's happening too is the attackers getting more sophisticated. So layered security is part of what you do as a means of dealing with it. So this problem is going to keep growing, and especially as there's more hardware and software out there, there's going to be more and more creative attacks. I'm assuming all of you in here run virus scanning locally, right? Okay. What do you guys run? What are the software products? Like Kaspersky? Okay. So it's fun because Kaspersky is a Russian virus scanning company, and McAfee is not a Russian virus scanning company. And what's neat is when they look for different viruses, and there's all these theories and stuff. So this whole world that we live in, and it's funny because you guys you're like this little small niche that no one knows about, but you guys communicate with what was the statistic yesterday? You guys push so much mail out in this industry. Like, what is it? How many humans do you touch a day with communications? It's in the millions, right? Oh, yeah. Every day. And you guys, it blows my mind. I was talking to someone, I feel like you guys are the original, like, Benjamin Franklins of now. Because you have to be. You're pushing information. But what's crazy is there's so much attacking. You guys are using all kinds of software. And I'm sure you're trying to reduce your price, but security does cost. But I'll get into a little more details about how you change your culture. All right. Does anyone know what a botnet is? Yes. Okay, so basically what it is a collection of computers, and I can do something, a denial of service attack. What happens is the malware comes on the computer, I take over your computer, and I can do whatever I want with it. So then I can use that computer, and I sell it to then do an attack on a website. So say AccuZIP's website. I could rent a botnet for a little while to bring down AccuZIP's website by having a few thousand or maybe tens of thousands of computers attacking the same site simultaneously. And stopping that's really, in a lot of cases, impossible. But this is what happens too. So when you don't patch your computer, your grandmother's computer that's running viruses right now, she's participating in cyber war and doesn't even know it. Because your computer's probably going to be a zombie, is what they call it. All right, this is some of my favorites. Social engineering is fascinating. So left-hand side. If you found keys in the parking lot right now with a little Kroger, or I don't even know what they do in California, but like Kroger card and a thumb drive on it, you found it in the parking lot, what would you do with that? You'd probably go to your computer and plug it in to figure out whose it is. Hopefully what now? What's crazy is around the Pentagon, folks were sprinkling these. Like, this is a very common technique. So we attacked a company in Atlanta this way because we were hired to. And people were just trying to be nice. Who has passwords on stickies on their computers in here? Okay. So Kevin Mitnick, I think he's a very famous social engineer. Back in the day, he would get a job as a janitor, and then after hours walk around and get this kind of stuff to actually own the network. So you don't necessarily have to do some sophisticated, expensive hack. I just get a job for a few weeks, I'm hanging out in there, and I look for sticky notes. This right here is actually, remember when Hawaii had the alert?
Oh, yeah.
There's theories that this is possibly what it was tied to. Yeah. I mean, people, it's hilarious. So yeah, this is the kind of behavior that I'm suggesting you guys to change. It's not that you don't trust your people, but you just trust and verify, as Ronald Reagan said. All right, so the happy world is super freaking cheap. This little device here, if I don't want it to be if I want to be connected to the internet, fine. But if I want to buy the cheap one for $40, I can come into your office, sit down for an interview, or whatever else you're trying to study something, and I can reach down to your keyboard, and assume you use USB. I can unplug your USB keyboard, plug it in, walk away. And everything you freaking type, I'm recording. So this is social engineering. This is so easy to do and so freaking fun. But what I'm suggesting is there's also software that'll do similar things on your computer, like the malware will come in and record your keystrokes, but it's really easy. If someone wants to ruin your life, they can. If someone wants to own your data, they will. You're responsible, though, for putting layers in front to make it harder And then basically, you don't want to be standing out as a beacon of free data. You want to be hidden and not heard on that world. So anyway, if I have physical access to your environment, I can own your entire network. I mean, just the IT guy. You sit on your desk, you call the IT guy in because you had a problem, make the problem big enough where he has to give, or she has to give like root level access locally, typing in a VM remotely, and then I got the password. So, thinking this way is fun, but also kind of scary. All right, my assumption is here, you guys experience phishing attacks all the time, we all do. Spear phishing attack is a lot more sophisticated, where I'm crafting something where I know who you are, and I might know people you know, and I use that as a means of trying to get malware on your computer, get you to visit a website to then put malware on your computer. So my assumption is your world, spear phishing attacks can be, look for them. You're going to be quicker to click because it comes from the CEO. But it might not be the CEO. So always look to see who it comes from. All the URLs you have in there, do not ever click on a URL without seeing what the actual path is. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll click on it, right click and copy, paste in my browser, just to make sure. And always look for typos in the URL, like Amazon.com spelled with 2 A's. Just be aware of that. The spear phishing, my theory is about your culture. Phishing, spear phishing, big deal for you guys. Also, PDFs and zips. All right, you guys see a lot of PDFs. Now, one thing to think about a PDF vulnerability. PDFs, you have an Acrobat reader. The vulnerability has to be within the reader. So there's things you can do is looking in different readers. You can also, if you're really scared, you can open it in a virtualized environment before, and there's software that can do this for you to kind of help validate, because there's lots of really cool tricks people can do to hide the malware inside the PDF. Always update your Adobe Reader. I recommend reading with different readers on occasion as well. Because yeah, ultimately it's about the software that's interpreting the data. And zip files, of course, everyone knows, just it's a zip file, I expand it, I have malware on my computer. Do you guys email zip files still? Do you guys email PDFs?
Sure.
All right, so malicious websites. You guys know what that is. All right, so this one's fun, and this is me kind of scratching my nerd itch. There is this thing called a zip bot, and the whole point was a lot of your software that's on the network trying to scan all the files before they come in will actually open them. If it's a zip file, they'll expand them. So this zip file was written in a way, it's a really small file, but as you expand it, it opened more zip files. And you kept going. And I think this one, the one that I actually was referencing here, would be like 45 petabytes of data. So the whole point was, I send a zip file in as an email. The tool like Suricata or like some IPS opens the file and basically has all the data filled up and it stops it from running. So then I can send other attacks in. But like the fact that I can take a small file and make it 45 petabytes just by opening is amazing to me. So nerd stuff. All right, I'm gonna give a little quick story about ransomware because this is sort of in my mind something all of y'all need to know more about, be aware of, and change your culture to prevent it. So I have a friend out of Alpharetta, Georgia. She's a nonprofit that does something called the Virtual Dementia Tour. And it's pretty freaking amazing where she basically did a lot of research in dementia and the experience the person has with it. She only simulates the auditory, but everything else she's just basically garbing you up to make you feel like you have dementia. So as a caregiver or a family member, you have the emotion, the empathy. So pretty amazing, wonderful mission. The person that actually ransomware didn't care. They tried to extort $5,000 from her. Someone in her office clicked on the wrong thing, the entire network was taken over, all the data was controlled. Well, this lady was like, F you guys, I'm not gonna pay, which, I mean, if you pay, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I know there's cities that pay when ransomware happens. My attitude is don't pay, because if they know you've paid once before, you're now gonna be on the market for more attacks. But she didn't pay, she spent $25,000 of IT money to get her data back, to get it fixed, but didn't pay the ransomware folks. Now, all it took was a lady getting an email and clicking on a link to own all their data. So that's scary, it's real. My theory is you're gonna see more of this happening everywhere, and people will be quiet about it because it's embarrassing, especially with your brand, you don't want people to know that. The FBI can't do anything, it's too small. $5,000 is nothing. They don't have enough workforce to actually handle that. So this is going to continue to be a big problem for us. All right, lastly, Insider threat, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that phrase before. You do have, who's seen the movie Office Space? Okay, so there's a wonderful bit in there where basically they left some software in there to steal money. You have the insider threat stealing money from the company. It was stealing pennies, it was intentional. You can't have disgruntled folks, especially folks that are IT, can leave bombs behind that when they get fired and stuff. So that is possible. But also the accidental is going to happen most. What I'm saying is here is don't trust anybody. Not when it comes to data and software. Always have policies that protect the data and only give people access when it's needed. So that'll help prevent it. So this comes back to layered security. All right, so high-level security considerations. So really when you think about security, the key piece is understanding what are your assets. So for you guys, I mean this is most people, it's your data. It's your software, if you actually write software. Your processes are also assets that are important to you too. Sometimes there's competitive advantages while you have them, but that's also data and information you want to keep. And then PII, I don't know about your industry per se, but I know a lot of folks who manage HIPAA and stuff. There are strict bad things that happen to you with fines and stuff if you violate and let PII release. And my assumption is you guys touch a lot of PII. And then lastly, your reputation, your brand. So when you're in security, don't think about the billions I was talking about. Really think about your world, your domain, what's important to you first. What are your assets? And then break down to what are your real threats. Yes, there's nation-state actors out there that are trying to do all kind of horrible stuff. But ultimately, for you in this room, I think, and this is the majority of companies in America, this is going to be a lot, especially with file transfers, zips, and PDFs for you guys, because you guys get data from a lot of customers, and your assumption is your customers, in a lot of cases, are being secure, but they're probably not. So always assume they're not. Always don't trust your customers' data. I would say that's probably one of your biggest vectors in, because if I wanted to own you and I understood where you're at, geez, I find a customer that's not very secure, I hack into them, I leave payloads in their files that they FTP, and I actually want to ask that out loud. Does anyone here still use FTP? Like not secure FTP, just like straight up. Okay, so I want you to know that every time you log in, your password and your username is in plain text. So that's a very scary thing because if someone's monitoring your network, they have your username and password. And if I get your username and password, I probably have ideas on what your other passwords are for your bank account and everything else too. So yeah, if you're using FTP now that's not secure, stop it. Fix that. All right. So again, don't trust your customers' data. All right, so this is really the old, like your risk. Your risk is what we're trying to find out with security. What is your true risk? So your assets plus threat plus vulnerability equals risk. It's a pretty simple equation. Part of what I want to talk about in a minute is business continuity planning, where you actually start identifying what is your assets, what are the important pieces, and that'll help you kind of nail down really what are these assets, and then we can talk about your culture, the software you use, the environment you're in, what are your true threats. And then vulnerability is going to keep changing every day because software changes every day. So definitely patching is very important. All right, so this is, I want to, kind of a conversation. How much time do I have? All right, good. So what is your true risk? That's really hard to quantify. So how many folks in here have actually dealt with an incident, actually had to respond to some sort of, okay. How many, anybody, okay, so has everyone dealt with some sort of infection? No? Okay. So how did you deal with it?
Multiple, we have a team of people that are security guys, and they don't go to sleep for several days. They're not all service attacks constantly on our.
Oh, of course you do, yeah. Okay.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Large data centers.
Sure.
So it was all the time.
So really understand what's your true risk, and that takes time and thought. And as I've described before, it's layered security. So encryption, security policies around passwords, changing them, length. There's other aspects of where do you get your data, where do you get your software, and I think supply chain also is kind of tied to you guys and the data that's coming in from your customers. And then business continuity planning sounds like a great idea. It's expensive and time consuming. But basically at the end of the day, if shit goes bad, how does your business continue to operate? So that's key about identifying what are your key assets, how do you protect them, and be able to shift so you can continue servicing your customers when stuff goes bad. And then the thing I'll harp on is culture and security awareness. I mean, at the end of the day, an individual sitting at a desk answering phones can click on a link and open up your entire organization to badness. So, all right, so do you guys feel like you are security savvy in here? How important is security in your business? How are you guys moving to cloud? No. Are you guys running your own servers back at home?
Yes.
In your basement? So I'm not saying you need to stop, but also think about its trade-offs, right? It's cost, time, money. There's a lot of benefit by using SaaS and cloud because I can lean upon that culture's security models instead of having to do it myself. But yeah, it's fun. Change is hard. All right, so increasing security posture. So business continuity planning, this is, I mean, large organizations have to do this. My personal opinion is for smaller businesses, you should have this thought process and kind of go through, if a crisis does happen, if an incident does happen where I've been compromised, what do we do? And then it's going to force you to look at your critical assets. And then you can start understanding how to respond when an attack happens. Because that's really what you want to do, is be prepared for it if it does happen. Because ultimately, everyone in this room is probably going to click on a link that's going to take you to some malware and probably compromise the computer. I mean, statistically speaking, everyone will. So I'm not trying to scare you, but there's just things you can start doing now to just kind of prepare for that. Because the risk is going to keep increasing for all of us. I'll share my slides if you guys are interested, but this is pretty straightforward stuff. It's tied to, there's a cert called CISSP, Certified Information Security Something Professional, where they talk about this. A lot of this, though, in security, I love to talk about fear, and love to talk about all this expensive stuff. I mean, security is expensive, but a lot of it's commodity. And a lot of it really boils down to just some simple practices you do. So I would encourage all of you just to at least think about what's important to you, to your company, and how do you protect that data. And how do you maintain backups and so forth. So on that note, this is just an outline of a plan. The right-hand side is most interesting to me for you guys in here. Cold side, warm side, hot side. How many folks have remote backups happening now? So everyone in the room? Okay, if you don't, go ahead and have remote, just in case. Everyone does backup, right? Okay. That's something too with cloud. I have a lot of political opinions about cloud, but having your data out there and then scattered is definitely a means of minimizing some of that risk. But it depends on the cloud provider too, because there's things I'll talk about in a second. The cloud, there's options where you can lean upon them for security, or you got to do it yourself. And there's trades and I mean, there's trade-offs in everything. It just really depends what's important to you. All right. So, are people thinking here moving to cloud more, or is everyone kind of happy where they are?
Happy where we are.
Okay, so, and I guess some are in the cloud, but some are happy where you are. Okay. Well, and I like that of happy where I'm at because that's, I mean, you got a business that's working. Why do we need to change? Just stress again, think about your data. Think about the one day you walk in and you don't have access to your network and your data's gone. What are you going to do? Can't happen, right?
Can't.
Especially when it feeds your family. So there's a few things in regards to just thinking about that data and coming up with measures in place. So one means is moving to cloud and then SaaS and managed security services. This is a means, depending on how big your company is, but of getting access to security expertise that I don't have to hire. Like I actually work for a cyber gaming company. We sell a piece of software that teaches people how to do offensive and defensive cyber. Because the workforce development, like the workforce in the world, I think it's we'll be lacking 3.6 million security professionals by 2025 globally. So make a lot of money in security. But finding talent and hiring them, that's hard. So a lot of it can be delegated to software. Like, AccuZIP is an example of where they have compliance. They're doing a lot of stuff in regards to HIPAA and others that help you. You're delegating that responsibility to them. And that's actually fantastic because then the burden's not on you. There's a lot of things you can do in other aspects of your organization. So the MSSPs are becoming more and more commonplace. How many folks actually employ security professionals in your organization? Okay. Figured not, because they're expensive mainly. Yeah, and talent. Software talent's hard to find. All right, how many folks do web programming in here? Okay, so a little bit. This is OWASP, is a fantastic community around web development. There's a lot of principles of software development around security. Because that's, at the end of the day, all these vulnerabilities start with the human sitting there with the keyboard typing. So this is a list of secure programming techniques that need to be applied as you're coding to minimize those risks. I talked about layered security, so that's defense in depth. Always sanitize your inputs. Don't assume the person who's giving you data knows what data you need. Always sanitize means just check it. So if you're expecting text, make sure it's text before you put it in. Same thing with you guys in these file distribution things. I mean, I think it's neat. You guys, how do you guys actually transfer files now? Do you have a website where people just upload files to you, FTP? Okay. Same thing there. It's don't trust that. You can build defense in depth in regards to validating it. You guys probably hopefully have it scanning for viruses at least on the box where it comes to, right? Yeah. All right, so this list here, like I said, I'll share my slides. It's just really good at getting this mindset. Because part of what I'm trying to do as an evangelist is getting the security mindset just sort of in there. Just change your DNA a bit, your behavior. Just recognize there are threat actors out there trying to steal your data. All right, so if you have coders, some good principles for how you actually develop. All right, I'm getting into a little more expensive, but a little more fun. So again, I'm going to say it's illegal to attack someone's computer without prior authorization. Okay, in the United States. So pen testing. How many folks actually employ pen testing in here? You have? Yeah. So when you do, you obviously understand you have threats that you can't really comprehend or actually assess yourself. So you can hire a human to go be a hacker, but on your team. So that's a very common technique. You can do it internally or external. We used to do it at Georgia Tech a good bit. There's these open source tools on the right-hand side. Kali Linux is actually a pen testing tool in a box. It's built on Linux. You get all of these really sweet tools, including Nmap and Metasploit, to be an attacker. So you can actually attack yourself pretty inexpensively. Being sophisticated can be a challenge. You can use things like these scanners. Nmap's a scanner where I can run it on my network, and fingerprinting is the term you use when you try to find a piece of software. So if I can identify that box is running Windows X patch with this, I can go look online to find vulnerabilities of it. So part of what you don't want to have happen is ability for people to know, to actually fingerprint you. So you can use a tool like that to kind of see what does your attack surface look like. The other thing I was thinking about you guys too as well is internal phishing campaigns. So how many folks actually do internal phishing of your employees now? So there's products out there. It's fun. The same person every month probably clicks on it every week. I mean, it's crazy. I've always wanted to have the wall of sheep. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but like at this one hacker conference, if you use FTP and your password and stuff was plain text out there for everybody, they would put it on a wall. So everyone at the conference knew your username and password. And they call it the wall of sheep. For phishing, I would love to do that at work, but you probably get sued. But phishing campaigns, because you're trying to change behavior. I mean, that's really all. This comes back to culture. Change the behavior of your culture. So yeah, you can buy software to do it, or you can do it yourself. Also, I got some buddies that do social engineering for hire, which is fantastic. He basically gets hired by like police organizations, health organizations, to attack them by social engineering them. So a lot of the times he's a janitor. The one thing he told me is every time he goes in the bathroom and sits on the stall and just kind of calms down, because when he first gets in, and every bathroom typically has a map of the floor for fire escape. So he takes pictures of that and he has a map of the entire floor now. Like all this kind of stuff, it's crazy. But it just really depends on what your risk. For you guys, I doubt most of you here will really need to hire a social engineer. Some phishing campaigns probably be something very helpful. Kind of minimize that risk and identify who's your bad actors and, layer security around them as well. Maybe it makes it have, 45 character long passwords. So pen testing, definitely a fun art. All right, so cultural security awareness. I want to just kind of talk a little bit and get some feedback. At the end of the day, leadership, you guys, the leaders of the organization, in a sense, convey the behaviors of the rest of the organization. So have really good passwords. Leadership of really good passwords. Have and communicate the importance of that. And when I say good passwords, and get to that now, basically. How many folks use the same password for every website you go to? Okay, good. I know you're lying, but it's okay. So there's techniques, there's these password tools you can use. What I try to do is I use sentences, and I'll use a sentence that motivates me, and then I'll also use context. So I use a little bit of trick of where I'm at will dictate a certain concept, and then what I'm doing might change the sentence. So there's a whole bunch of ideas and techniques there, but for the love of your data, don't use the same password. And especially with tied to your data, my gosh, I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be complicated. Length is in a lot of cases what's important, because a lot of it has to do with brute force attacking. But yeah, your policies also dictate the security too. How often you change your password, what's the length, so on and so forth. So think about the policies as tools as a means of also adjusting your culture. And then, depending on your workforce, if you have software folks that are writing code, get them a little educated on security programming techniques and how to be a little more secure as they're coding. Same thing with your IT shop. Getting them a little more security savvy, help them understand what are the real risks that you guys are dealing with. Because you don't want to you can't really protect against everything. Because like I said, if I want your data, I will get it. But my hope is most of you guys in here are not prime targets. But as a nation-state mindset, when I realize how the impact you guys have, you guys are a really attractive asset. I mean, I don't know if you guys are compromised now, but if I was doing campaigns overseas toward the US, I would own every single one of your shops because of the data you have. And I wouldn't tell you. Now, I doubt that's the case, but I don't know. So anyway, any thoughts, comments, questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. How do you feel about password management software? Like, I use something called LastPass, and how do you suggest people manage these kind of pretty wild, long, hard to remember passwords?
So those are good tools. The only problem I have with that is it's a central point. So all of my really important data is there. So if there's a vulnerability in that software that someone can compromise, so I use this, but I'm also kind of weird. But I'm like really complicated passwords. I mean, part of the time is people think like a complicated, randomly generated password is more secure. Not necessarily. It really has to do with length, and in most cases, 16 characters or more. I try to do 24 characters or more.
I use LastPass as well, and it's incredible because it does two-factor authentication. So every time you log in, it's two-factor. And
so that's helpful.
And if your computer, you're constantly logging in from
Right.
a different location, you won't log in, it actually goes back through. If you're at the same desk, it will, but if you're somewhere else. So I use LastPass as well.
So the two-factor is another version of layered security. Because the fact that I have it two-factor, I would feel safer.
So if somebody's trying to log in LastPass on your behalf, you'll know. Because you'll get your two-factor with your cell phone to identify that somebody's trying to log in.
So the two-factor is going to be a means of us dealing with weak passwords. That's becoming common. Like Microsoft 365 now calls my phone when I log in. That's helpful. But yeah, to me though, I recommend though password schemes that you got to type it all the time. So make it something funny or something that reminds you. Like mine definitely, every day I have a sentence that motivates me with some special characters at the end, or in the front, or in the middle. I'm not telling you where my stuff. Okay. Any other comments, thoughts, questions? Yes, sir.
How do you feel about the virtual private networks?
You need them. They're essential. Like,
I started using one at home just because I'd read some reviews and it sounded like they were pretty.
so you're doing another layer of security. But check it out though, if you have a virtual private network in the office, and then someone from home connects into your virtual private network, if their infrastructure is not as secure, that might be another vulnerability in. So we had like policies change where you couldn't VPN anymore on a non-work computer because the person at home does not maintain the security probably at the level that the organization wants them to.
What are your thoughts on like Dropbox and Google Drive and using those?
Great, fantastic. Because you're doing a couple things. You're protecting your data in a different way. It's distributed, so the probability of it being all burned down at once is unlikely. Most of those services do have two-factor authentication, which can increase the security on it. I mean, yeah, that, especially for you guys. I mean, you guys probably, when Dropbox came out, you guys were probably just gobbling that stuff up, right? Because that seems like an ideal tool for your industry. But yeah, no, I would definitely recommend those kinds of tools. But again, their assets are important to you. Don't assume that it's organizations keeping them safe for you.
Or your salesperson in the field.
Exactly.
Making it totally public. And you don't know.
Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I use Norton Wi-Fi, so anywhere, like if you're in an airport or in a hotel, you get access to the internet, that's wide open. With Norton Wi-Fi, it's like a VPN, like you being in Texas, but it will make them think you're in like Australia. And the cool thing is everything's encrypted.
Right.
And so even if you're logged in free to like, especially airports, there's no security, right? Somebody be next to you with a wire shark, sees everything you're doing. But
Well, it had the same Wi-Fi name as Atlanta Wi-Fi.
oh, sure.
Yeah. So
But what Norton does is it logs in, scrambles everything, first of all, and it's only $6 a month.
yeah, so those principles, like he's definitely a security nerd where you're paranoid. And you kind of have to be. I call it dirty internet. Don't use dirty internet. Don't use dirty internet. Never. Just I bring my cell phone because I know I have a here, and I know the cell carrier has a lot of incentive to keep an hour off of the network, and I feel safer here than logging onto the airport.
That's a good point, because on your cell phone you can set up what's called the personal hotspot.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I travel with my internet because I don't trust any of you jokers. Yes, sir.
Your opening slide showed the Alexa and the smart plugs. How do you protect your home?
Jeez. Okay, me personally, I talk a good game. How do I protect my home? I don't, but the risk. So the risks that I see, I'm not really worried about them. If that makes sense. Like the risk versus reward.
I'm concerned about malware taking over my refrigerator.
Oh, that will happen. Oh, that's going to happen. It's going to be beautiful. I'm gonna make your milk go bad. Yeah, I mean, it's no, but like, so in that situation, I have friends that are super paranoid and have their VPNs and buy these really expensive devices to scan all the internet. It just depends on what you need. For me, the risks that I have are pretty low. I have a camera for my chickens, so I can see it on the internet. I'm not really worried about someone hacking into that. Yeah. So.
Wile E. Coyote, maybe.
Dude, we have coyotes in Georgia and they're bad. They love to murder chickens. Yes, sir.
They can hack into your Alexa or something like that and literally listen to your conversation.
Well, absolutely, right? I mean, but that's also smart TVs. There are a lot of smart TVs. Yeah. So if someone's listening to my conversation, I'm okay with that. Yeah. But it's just, you can be paranoid, you can be a Luddite and get off the grid. But at the end of the day, how do we make money right now? It's through the freaking internet. I mean, so just be paranoid. Don't use dirty internet. I mean, don't use dirty internet and passwords long. Get rid of the sticky notes. All right. Any other comments, questions? Yes, sir.
Well, lest anyone think that it can't happen, our plate salesman told me a story about one of her customers. It was just a printer, just like a bunch of people in this room. Somebody got in, they wanted $50,000 to give him his data back. All his customer database, the whole nine, it was all locked.
Man, that shit is real. And it scares me because
This was, not a big company either.
well, and 50,000 is the number. There's like a limit for the FBI to get involved. I don't know if $50,000 is high enough. And the local law enforcement, what are they going to do for you?
We had a print shop in town that got hit for $20,000 and their insurance company offered to pay it. So they locked their network and they just...
Oh, that just kills me. Like,
Yeah, don't do that.
for the love of everything here, seriously, ransomware is going to hit you guys one day. Just assume it's going to happen.
We got hit January 2nd. 1 million files got locked out. Thank God I had online backup.
Did you pay it?
No, I deleted them all, restored the online backup in 4 days, but.
Man, it's scary. And what's crazy is that person will never be found there, all over the globe. I mean, what I'm theorizing is there's folks scattered around the United States already compromised that they're owned. And then people are selling access down the black market so then people can buy. They don't have to be the hacker. They can go buy access to compromise your network and extort money out of you.
So I went to a webinar, one of the banks I used to that actually had a seminar. They had Kevin Mitnick there.
Did they really?
He was the most wanted person by the FBI.
Yeah.
They caught him, now he's doing the good stuff. But he actually by opening a PDF document on one computer that he sends to someone, he actually sent it to himself. They opened the PDF document, he was able to see every file from another computer, every single file. Just like you would log in through Log Me In, or he saw everything and grabbed all of it.
And that's back to,
Opening a PDF.
but it's a vulnerability in that software. And the hope is Adobe was really good at patching to prevent that to happen, but that's what doesn't happen here too probably, is patching. People, you ever heard the term 0 day? 0 day is a really expensive, like, no one else has it, the nation states build them all the time, they're like, Stuxnet was a 0 day. But we don't need those anymore, because most people don't do good security and patch. Who's in here still running Windows ME? Is anyone running Windows 2000 still? Okay, because like, I love, because you guys are, I think you guys are paranoid, but yeah, so the ransomware stuff. Yeah, and if you guys need help, I have plenty of friends. If you ever get attacked and you want someone to go after somebody, I have some bounty hunters that are pretty cool as well. But yeah, the security world is fascinating, but scary. So yeah, any questions, comments?
Do you have a business card?
I don't have it on me, but I'll bring it down. Yeah. All right. Well, good to meet you. Thank you guys for having me. Oh, sorry. Yes, sir.
I was going to say, how do you feel about setting up a virtual machine inside your machine?
Absolutely.
To sandbox it.
So that's
so that people can, when they use your computer and if they try and put it on a virus or something, you just shut it down and you copy over your, a clean copy of the sandbox.
So sandbox is a common term where you basically have everyone knows like VMware is in here? So you're running a virtualized computer. Yeah, commonly in security environments you'll run a sandbox where you'll open the virus or open the malware or open the PDF there to see if it compromises anything. That's one technique you could absolutely use, is all your customer data, having the virtual machine you're running and opening to look at, virus scanning it. Because then if it does get compromised, you just turn that virtual machine off and then back on. But sandboxing is a very common term for helping to mitigate some of those issues. So you actually sandbox this. There's so many nerds in here, I love it. It's just fantastic. All right. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Just one more. There's something called Kubernetes or something that's supposed to surpass virtual machines. Anything? I don't know if I'm even pronouncing it right, but they're containerization.
So containerization is in a sense, yeah, you're not having to have a full operating system, you're having, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've studied a lot. I still can't figure out what it is, so maybe it's really good. I don't know.
But it's very
It's supposed
specific.
to be beyond virtual machines.
It is. Well, that's right. And the whole point is you're containerizing these methods and functions where you don't need all those resources. And I'm sure there's security vulnerabilities in there as well.
Like Bitcoin. I could read about that forever. I still don't understand.
We can talk later over alcohol if you want to know that. Okay. Say again?
That was yesterday.
That's right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. I got a flash, don't I? Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and very good to meet all of you.